So thank you guys for joining us today. We're here with Rob Cristofaro, and we're gonna have a little chat about keeping creative during quarantine. So as you know, quarantine has now been extended, I guess, way longer than we initially anticipated, and we can now incorporate a little revolution into it. So I think this is a worthwhile conversation because people need to know kind of how to navigate the space, especially if they're in the streetwear and street entrepreneur space. I feel like you would provide some good insight on that. So first and foremost, can you just introduce yourself and give us a little backstory as to who you are?
So my name's Rob Cristofaro, one of the co-founders of ALIFE back in '99. Always kind of been in the design and kind of graphic arts world, you know. That was kind of when we started ALIFE. ALIFE was really a space that was almost a workshop. So what allowed us to survive, because none of us knew how to operate a store, was the ability to make money from kind of like agency and art, you know, graphic design, doing logos for people, doing, you know, all kind of art related commercial work is kind of what, you know, funded the early days of ALIFE. So, you know, that was kind of the start of the real, of using, you know, using the art skills into, you know, turning it into a job, you know, a money-making thing.
Nice. So we've been quarantined for plus 75 days now. What does a typical day look like for you now versus pre-quarantine? I know you're pretty creative. I see you doing things all the time. So just how has that changed and what keeps you motivated now?
I think pre was, you know, like most people, I think everybody was kind of accustomed to their schedule, their daily, you know, whether it was a weekday, a weekend, you kind of, you know, get up, you do your thing, you go to work. So when the quarantine, you know, when everybody stopped going to work, I think I kind of, not was oblivious, but I was kind of not thinking that it was going to be what it was, you know, so I kind of continued going to my studio, you know, and I remember, you know, the first day, the second day, the third day, and it was just getting, you know, the building that I have my studio in is in Lower Manhattan, the financial district, which is usually a pretty bustling area. And, you know, day by day, it was just the whole office building that I was in was just getting, you know, emptier and emptier. And, you know, pretty soon I was just, you know, I felt like I was there at midnight and it was, you know, daytime. So I finally, you're gonna have to excuse some of the noise because I live across the street from a firehouse. So that might interrupt. But, you know, so little by little, you know, I kind of said, I'm just going to pack up the, you know, my computer, which is basically my lifeline to everything. You know, I have computers in my house. I have them in my studio, but my real workforce is in my studio. So I just kind of took that, packed it up, brought it home and, you know, set up shop in the house. Fortunately for myself, you know, that's really all I need is my iMac and my a few drives that I have. The rest is just, you know, the ability to be connected via internet. Other than that, you know, I carry a book, I carry, you know, minor things that I really needed. So, you know, at the beginning, a couple years ago, I moved into a studio. It was very small, which that was kind of a newer mindset that I was in, where it was like, I didn't really want a lot of shit around me. You know, I wanted the things that I was working on at the time, at the moment. I wanted, you know, just a visual board that I could kind of like, you know, be reminded of the things that are happening. And it's really almost a micro, you know, space. You know, 4 people, 4 workstations, everybody kind of like sharing a very small space, everybody very intimate, but a really, you know, I always say it's a micro space, but we're outputting maximum, you know? So that was like kind of the mindset going into it. So, you know, moving my workstation home and getting out of the daily, you know, the usual day that I was used to. I think at first it felt like almost like a vacation, a forced vacation, you know? And then it started turning into kind of really just focusing on, you know, focusing on my work and just really taking time with it, having no interruptions, like really kind of a different kind of workflow where, I mean, my studio is very much my home also, but this was even more, you know, more of a different vibe. You know, I'll burn an incense, I'll get the windows, the birds out, you know, like it's a different vibe. And it's much more focused in regards to like, you know, I make a daily checklist of things that I need to like bang out, you know, and that's it. I'm focused on that. Outside of, you know, the being in your home, you know, as you can attend, you have children, I have a child. So, you know, my scenario is a little different because I share my daughter with her mother and we don't live together, but we, you know, every day we're dealing with each other, but my kid goes back and forth. So I have her, you know, thankfully she's old enough where she is responsible enough to do her work on her own. And she, you know, so while I'm doing my work, she's doing her work, but still, you know, it's a child there. You have to feed, you have to maintain, you know. It's just been a real test of, you know, sanity, focus, like, you know, I think this is just another curveball. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a learning experience of, you know, how to work in this scenario, which is, you know, a new scenario. And I think, you know, I think a lot of businesses are going to change from this. I think a lot of people are going to see that they don't necessarily need to be going into a space that's, you know, so I think a lot of things are going to change from this. I don't know exactly how, but, you know, I'm a trooper and I am here to make shit happen no matter what. So long answer.
No, that's the perfect answer. I think that attests to the longevity of the ALIFE brands. Or what advice can you give for people who are in streetwear now? Like, let's say, you know, we're still here and maybe they're struggling right now. Or maybe they're trying to figure out, like, what do I do next? Or they just don't know what to do. What do you think you could tell them that can help them get that space?
I think, you know, number one, I think the people that are doing the best work or the work that I love really the most are the people that are really just doing what comes from their heart, you know? And I think a lot of that, you know, for us, for me specifically, the, you know, the daily environment that we're living in dictates really what we put forth, you know, or the projects that, you know, the projects that I get involved with more and more, you know, at my age, after doing this, you know, the brand for 20 years, after being in the creative industry for 30 years, like more and more, it's not really work. Whereas, you know, when I started this, it was work. You had to go do things. You had a boss. You had, you know, a bunch of tasks that were expected of you. And that to me was always boot camp. You know, that's like, you're underneath somebody that has experience, you're learning, you're sharpening your skills, you're doing your thing. You're learning how to, you know, follow directions. You're learning how to, you know, finish the task at hand. You're learning to like do all these skills that eventually are gonna build you into your body of work. So, you know, you fast forward from the boot camp days to now, and you know, I really like to work on projects that are relevant to myself. So, you know, Lee Jeans, for example, was a project that we did last year. Lee Jeans in the marketplace was not, or is not, a trendy product, you know, in streetwear. Nobody even knows what the hell Lee Jeans is, I don't think, you know, for the most part. There's fashion.
I know.
People,
That's I mean, the mold, come on.
You know, I grew up in New York. You grew up in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Lee Jeans, when I was growing up, was part of the outfit that people wore. Years old, B-boys wore Lee Jeans. That was part of life. So, you know, as last couple years ago, when it came about, you know, I'm thinking about people that I want to work with. That was a specific brand that I grew up on that resonated with me, that I had, you know, I had personal, you know, feelings towards. So that's the thing. So I reached out to them, you know, we started this conversation, we started a project, we did product. You know, it takes a lot of times a year and a half to create these projects that, you know, come out finally. And this is the hard part, I think, about what I do, is a lot of times I pick brands that are not relevant really at the time. And so it's a very, you know, in streetwear, you're creating a product, and your product, in order to be successful, you have to move your product. People have to buy into it. So a lot of times the things that I play with, you know, Crocs, Lee, you know, whatever it is, Timberland, back when we did Timberland, before Timberland did any co-brands with anybody, you know, these are staple products that mean to me. These are things that have meaning to me. And at the time we released them, you know, people are like, why, what is this? What does this mean? They don't know what it means. The core, our core fan base knows what it means, because they, you know, have experienced similar upbringings and environment and lifestyle that we came up in. So, you know, our core is very hardcore, and some of the shit that we put out is underground. People don't realize what it is. People don't know what it is. They're confused by it. You know, when we had the ALIFE store, we used to sell inks and markers and graffiti supplies, and people didn't know what it was. People thought the inks were perfume bottles. They didn't know what we were doing, what we were selling. And that's it. You know, it all has to have relevance to you. And so, you know, back to your question of what are people to do now, I think there is so much content happening right now, you know, around us, from the racial tensions that we're dealing with, the police, the diseases, you know, there's so much shit to explore, you know, and put yourself forth and, you know, get your message out. My message, unfortunately, wasn't, you know, a political or, you know, my message was always just creative. Like, I wanted to create shit, and I wanted to make impact, and I can use it for political means or for other means, but generally the things I do, I create products that are meaningful to myself first, and then people will enjoy the things that we come out. Yeah.
I went through great lengths to get this because A, this is my favorite author, and B, I think it's very timely for what's happening right now. So you guys did a Black History Month release in February. And I just want you to take me through what the process is, I guess, on coming up with these type of releases, and then how it kind of caught up to current times.
Right.
And how you kind of turned that voice into, while you're not a political brand, you kind of hit the mark in how you addressed politically what was happening.
And so that, you know, for instance, all of the Black history stuff and the more recent, the Ahmad sweatshirt we did, that was before really all of the shit started. But my current partner, Trey Hill, which I'm not sure, you know, who knows him, of African-American descent, you know, this is a very important subject for him to put forth. And, you know, just like I have my things that I deem important, you know, he had his perspective and his, you know, knowledge of growing up as an African American and the things he's dealt with and the things that we deal with currently with dealing with these corporate brands and watching the way people navigate. And, you know, so ALIFE, even though our initial founding partners we did not have an African American down with us, but we were, you know, the community that I grew up in was the graffiti community, which was, you know, just like anything in New York, the skateboarding community, you know, all these niche, you know, groups, they're a melting pot of everybody, you know? So we grew up with everybody, you know, and this is nothing like really, you know, I think a lot of people, you know, are just kind of out of touch with reality, and it becomes, you know, when I sit next to my partner who, you know, I know that all of the you know, civil justices and all this stuff is important, and I hear it and I see the things that he wants to do, you know, and he brings things to the table that are, you know, sometimes, you know, they're controversial in ways, you know, like they're subjects that, you know, we put forth and we don't really, you know, we putting them forth not for making money off of the shit. It's just that the views that are important to what's happening in our little studio, you know. So the sweatshirt that you're wearing, that was, you know, part of I forgot how many different ones we did. I think 8 different ones or something like that of people that were relevant, you know. And I think that's just another, you know, another plus that we have built into our operation is the ability to go, you know, both black, white, whatever it is, you know, and do it legit. Like, we're not like, you know, a bunch of white people just like, okay, you know, on the internet and seeing, you know, what's trending and doing it. These are real life, you know, we try, that's the one thing, is ALIFE will never put forth bullshit. We will never put forth some trendy bullshit that everybody else is doing. We will put forth real content that is happening and affecting ourselves and our people, which is, you know, our community is really based upon downtown Manhattan, these urban, you know, areas, but, you know, our audience is global, but we really rep for, you know, where we are, and that's what we've always done. But that's a, you know, to me, it's a great, I forget the word that I'm looking for, but it's an addition that just broadens our voice, you know, legitimately.
Well, I was going to say, you guys have always resonated with the people, and you've always been a brand that was ingrained in the culture. So for you guys to even take a left or a right turn and really speak to anything that's happening is not a stretch. Whereas I see a lot of brands are struggling, you know, trying to step outside of that box and be a part of this conversation because it's something they've never done. Like everyone's just, you know, let's just do this and that'll be fine. But it's going to look weird if that's not instilled in your brand off rip. So with that being said, if there's any new brands up and coming, how do you think they should navigate? Like, let's say someone wants to start a brand now. Like, how do you think they should position their voice or potentially a brand's, I don't want to say a motto because that's like a mission, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, how do you think they should go about starting that?
I really think that, you know, I think that the best bet is to be honest in who you are and what you do. Don't put forth, you know, I think a lot of brands are just empty, hollow nothings, which is why usually they don't stick around for too long. So I think that, you know, don't create something that is make-believe, you know, create something that you have a personal attachment to or something that you want to really, you know, your inspirations, your, you know, where your heart is, because ultimately, you know, creating a clothing line is no fucking short-lived thing. You know, you're gonna spend your life doing this. Life, no shit, is my life's work. It's 20 years of me creating and surviving and building and, you know, reaching out to people and you know, for anybody that's trying to come in and out of it real quick, you know, that it's not really the move. You're gonna end up, you know, pulling your hair out. You're gonna end up losing money. You're gonna end up, you know, hating the scenario. So I think that, like, you know, number one, you have to have, you know, a strong desire to, you know, to succeed, number one, and to, you know, put forth, you know, things that are meaningful to you as yourself, whatever the fuck it is, nature, smoking weed, whatever it is, you know, there's all different ways to zone in on these things and turn them into, you know, into all different things. So I think just honesty is like great, you know, like do what you love and then tune that shit up, you know, and on it, and that's really it. So that's really the best advice I could give is like do what you love and portray it honestly.
How do you think the streetwear industry is going to change after all this?
I mean, I love Instagram pre-COVID and you know, even right now with all the racial shit happening, it's very hard for me to like watch Instagram right now just because of course it's a trending subject and everybody's on it. But some of the shit that I read, you know, with these companies that are basic, you know, in streetwear, there's the brands and then there's the outlets that report on what we do, on what we create, you know, and these are very influential outlets, you know, and I just read a blurb that somebody said that was basically streetwear was created by the Black culture. And I kind of like, you know, took that comment and I was like, you know, streetwear really was not created by the Black culture. It was an inner city. It was the same shit. It was a melting pot of people from all different races, and that created this thing. So I think like, just a lot of the people that are commenting on it are not living it as usual. You know, they comment on the shit that we make, they're not living it, you know? So it's really like, that has fucking bothered me, you know, with all these people commenting on what they're gonna do and how they're gonna do it and give money to this and that. Like, it's very fake to me, and I'm just like, you know, I'm tuning. That's why I haven't really been posting that much. Like, there's phases that I go through with Instagram, and just like, I kind of been turned off with everything, you know? The way that people are, you know, just partaking in all, in the current events right
now. So you guys also did ALIFE sessions. Can we just talk about the crossover between music and street life? Because I know also too, you guys did a playlist that I actually listened to, and it's of the songs that are happening now. So can you just speak to the influence of things like music and art, I guess?
I think, you know, the transition, because it was really our transition into music happened, you know, in the mid 2005 or something like that. But it was dictated on our retail space at the time, where, you know, 1999 to 2005 or 4, whatever it was, had a space that was really a big space that allowed us to do visual arts well. You know, like, it was a gallery slash store slash creative agency. And so a lot of our focus moving into a new space was visual arts. We moved into a much smaller retail space, and we're no longer able to like do these, you know, these visual arts to the extent that would have been meaningful. But we acquired the backyard at the Rivington stores, Rivington Club and the ALIFE shop. And what happened with those, you know, with the backyard, is it became a venue basically, for music. And what we started focusing on was really approaching musicians the same way we would approach visual artists, but basically approaching musicians and putting them in a scenario that allowed them to freestyle with other musicians and create these, you know, these music, these shows that people could come and see. And that was really the birth of ALIFE Sessions, was basically just playing with music as another medium to introduce to our, you know, to our audience.
So speaking of that particular location, you are an industry expert in the Streetwear Essentials course that we just dropped with Complex and Parsons. And this week we just launched the 360 tour of that space. So can you just speak a little bit to the course? I know you took a look at it this week, but can you speak to the Streetwear Essentials course and why you think a course like that, especially in today's climate, could be important to people who are just starting in the streetwear industry?
Wait, say the question again. I'm sorry. I'm like lost.
So how do you think, so we just launched the ALIFE 360 in the streetwear course.
Now, what is the 360?
So it's basically a tour of the space and so on and so forth. So it's a case study, yes.
Okay.
So it's in the course, you're teaching in the course. So why do you think a course like that could potentially be important to people who are starting streetwear? Like, people are just jumping in now.
I mean, I think that, I'm not sure still if I'm going to answer this properly, but like, I think that, you know, the retail is really the ultimate home for whatever you're creating, you know? So our current retail, that's been there since 2004, you know? We've done other retail pop-ups, if you may, that are more contemporary. Like the most recent was we created a shop in the Bronx Museum of the Arts, which was more my current view of retail, you know, which I've always been kind of on this, and I've done it previously when we first did Fairfax. We created this environment where all of the product was on display, but everything was behind glass, that you could not touch anything. You kind of had to point to what you wanted. Somebody would get it for you from showroom. So it was kind of creating this installation that once it was created, that was it. That was my vision of retail at the time. And that has always been something that I've kind of played with. And, you know, fast forward 15 years later to the Bronx Museum, and, you know, that was a micro section of it, but it was still the same thing. It was a contained, contained installation of product that you could buy everything, but you couldn't touch shit, you know? So I think retail is really your opportunity to, you know, you have to get up to that level of having the funds to rent a space, build it out, you know, do everything that it takes. But I think like the end goal, or at least not the end goal, but a big part of it is, you know, that's the experience that when people are going to come and experience your brand, you're going to have this space that they come into, the smell, the music, the visuals. Like this is your environment. This is your Disney World. You know, I always like Disney World as an example because that's, you know, Walt Disney created this land of make-believe, you know? And so that's what you're really doing, is you're really just creating the, you know, the all experiential of your brand. So I love retail. You know, I think we've gone from having global, you know, locations all over to, you know, not, you know, and, but I do think that I love creating spaces and environments, experiences. And I think like that's really your chance to show the full breadth of the brands.
So you got to take a little look at the Streetwear Essentials course. I think you mentioned a small percentage. Do you think for people who are just jumping into the streetwear industry, would you recommend that they take the course?
Yeah, I think that, you know, I went through, I didn't sit through the whole thing because it's pretty in depth, I think. And I think the people that are, you know, that have partook in it, I think they're all very knowledgeable in what they've experienced, you know. April Walker as like, you know, one of the early on, you know, people in clothing at a time, you know, where there was no women really in her space doing what she's doing. So I think she has a very great perspective of what she brings. I think, you know, Jeff Staple has a great perspective. I think everybody, you know, everybody that's here has been in this game for 20 plus, you know, 25 plus years. And I think like that's the most, that is the most knowledge that you're going to get, is the people that have experienced the, you know, the life of this, you know, clothing and apparel business and, you know, streetwear. But, you know, it's, I think it's great you're touching on all that different elements, you know, the production, the conceptual, the branding, what makes, you know, there's just, I think I have to go through the whole thing, you know, but yesterday, the past 2 days, I took a little bit of time and just kind of was listening to everybody. talking their shit. And, you know, it's all very true. I mean, you listen to what people are saying and you can't knock any of them because it's all real, you know, and it's experiences that they've learned from and that they are putting forth to hopefully, you know, we never had this shit. We had, you know, back in the day, you could talk to people, you know, and that was really it, but you never had all in one place where you can really like get, you know, all these different touch points of what might be good to try and what might not be, you know? So I think, you know, I think it's a good spot.
What traits make you successful in your role and keep you on the up and up?
I think for me, doing what I love to do is a trait that, you know, that is more and more what I want to do. So the projects that I do, I have a deep love for, and it's the people that I want to work with. It's the brands that I admire for whatever reason. So really, like, you know, it's fun for me. I love creating. I love, you know, making shit. I love working with people. You know, ALIFE to me, I could be maybe a lot better at trend forecasting and knowing clothing and shit like that. But really, that shit isn't that important to me. My main importance is the content that we're putting forth and why is the stuff that we're doing. You know, yes, we put it on a sweatshirt. That's our medium, sweatshirt and t-shirt, you know? Other than that, like, I don't really care how many zippers you put on your shit or what kind of fucking, you know, hood you have. Like, no, we're doing content on apparel. And that is my bread and butter is a hat, a sweatshirt, and a t-shirt. You know, no matter what everybody says, they're designing, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're full of shit. It's really your message, you know? And that's what's going to make, you know, or break you. And to me, I am excited about what I do and I love it. And so there is no end to things that I want to put forth. And that's it. You know, I think it's going to get me, myself, it might even get more and more, I forget the word that I'm looking for, but strange, like, you know, unorthodox is really what I am. You know, I'm in the fashion game, but I don't really give a fuck about the fashion, you know, so.
So we have a question from Spulu, who's in the chat, and he wants to know, or she wants to know, because I'm not sure if it's male or female, how has mentorship helped you in your brand and career?
Damn. Well, unfortunately, we didn't have too many mentors. You know, when we started what we did, we didn't know anything. We basically just took a chance and freestyled our ass off until it started to kind of hook. You know, like if I look back at my mentor, the people that I would say are mentors to me was, I worked for an art director that was a mentor to me. He taught me how to visually put forth what I do, my ideas, in a way that was more classic. And, you know, he was a European, he was a French guy that came from the classic fashion publishing magazine world. So that was a big inspiration to me. Like, so a lot of the stuff that I do, I want, you know, when I put forth visuals and when I put forth content, a big thing for me is doing it right. The visuals have to be beautiful. The typography has to be dope. Like, I put a lot of time into any visual shit that I put out. It could be a story post that's only going to be up for a day. I put time into this shit. You know, I think about everything. In regards to mentorship with the stores and like the brand, like, no, unfortunately, we really did not have anybody. I had mentors in graffiti. I had mentors in, you know, on the art side of things, but the clothing business has been a straight up freestyle survival of the fittest journey.
That's a fact.
You
Okay, last question. Michael Jerome is asking, what's one piece of business advice that has always carried true, specifically in the streetwear brand community?
I think, I don't know if it's advice, but I would just say authenticity in what you do is like, to me, that's what I enjoy looking at, is people that are doing authentic, you know, whether it's content, whether it's design, whether it's product. Like, I like things that are, for whatever reason, it could be something that's based off of a classic but tweaked. Like, it could be, you know, as long as there's something new and you're bringing something to the table and not just copying some other shit, or, you know. So I think the most important thing is to really bring, you know, bring authenticity and originality, even though originality can be based upon other shit. You know, it would be great to take, I do it all the time. I take inspiration from everywhere, from art, from architecture, from environment, and I use all this shit. And I, you know, a lot of the shit that I do has been done before, except I'm just taking it and I'm putting my little twist on it, and I'm designing it this way, and I'm putting this color on it, and it's something new then. So I think, like, as long as you're, you know, you're curating the right things and putting them forth in the right way, I think, like, that's the move.
Where can we find you on Instagram?
My Instagram, people a lot of times can't find it. It's it's my name, Rob, but the O is a 0, so it's R0B 1970. And so
Perfect.
that's my personal, and then there's ALIFE New York, which is the brand, which is a little more commercial sometimes, because some of the shit that I post is kind of just out there. But you know, it's all, you'll see my posts both places, but you know, most of the time ALIFE is a little toned down from my own personal.
Thank you so much for joining us. They're thanking you in the chat too. They're saying, thank you, Rob.
Thank you, guys. I don't know if it, you know,
Another comment was that ALIFE is more than just a clothing brand, which obviously we know that already. And someone else said that they're always inspired by you and that they're super excited to have you talking here. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you know anyone who signed up, or you just caught the end, you missed the beginning, we're going to shoot you a replay link probably in a few days. And, you know, if you want to check out the course, it's yellowbrick.co/streetwear, and you can see what that's all about. But thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye, Tamika.